Hello everyone, I think I'm live now. Sorry for the delayed video. This is the kind of video I usually get out on a Friday, but I ended up posting my written review of Most Haunted Halloween Week PT3 far too late on in the day. So I'm doing it now just to try and get back on schedule and things. To anyone who has read that review, thank you very much for reading it. If you haven't, I can understand why they tend to be quite lengthy posts. But this particular review is probably going to be a bit shorter than what they usually are, because it was an interesting episode, I think, that not much happened in it, but at the same time a lot happened in it. So, yeah, but there are some certain points where I really want to discuss it. Particularly, first point, in my written review, I didn't start it how I usually start it, which is about the message that they put on at the very start, which reads as, if I've got it written down, which I have, the following programme is definitely not for entertainment purposes only. We stand by the legitimacy of this investigation. I don't think I mentioned this in the written review, when usually I start off every written review by commenting on that and saying that it's really good that they include it. The reason I didn't include it in the written review this time is because of what happens with Carl and Stuart. I have no issue with narrative building, as long as it's done. Like, I've commented on it in the written review because the way Carl does the narrative building is he overdoes it. There are ways of narrative building where you can do it in a more subtle way but still be just as effective, by commenting on the energy of the room, etc. He doesn't do that. He is far more blunt, which is why I critique it. With the message at the start being not for entertainment purposes only, it's okay for them to have narrative building because of the only that they include at the end. So it is also for entertainment purposes. Building tension is making it more entertaining. The issue I have with Carl and Stuart's section is you can so very easily poke holes in it. It's not an investigation at all, is the concern. Greg's part, absolutely fantastic. Glenn and Yvette's part was alright. My only criticism there would probably be how frequently they're moving between rooms. They do occasionally, but not for long. Stop in a room, try and call out, wait for stuff to happen. They don't do that much, but you've got to remember there might be lots of footage that they've cut out. But then you've got Carl and Stuart in a location which isn't that big, and they're not properly investigating it. They are standing there having a chat. I think in my review I was very, very harsh and said it was the equivalent of a bunch of people meeting up and going to the pub, and then seeing someone drop a glass in the distance and they don't know the ins and outs of it. They're not really going to go have a look. They just know it's happened, and will react to it. That's very much so Carl and Stuart in this episode, which isn't very good. And that's why I didn't mention the not for entertainment purposes only message, because they're passing it off as a legitimate investigation with entertaining flair thrown into it. However, they don't investigate. They don't at all. Walking around shouting hello isn't investigating. And that's what they do. They walk around, they say hello. They try and cover all the bases every now and then, saying they're not there to harm the spirit, they're just wanting to communicate, they just want to know the story. And the same stuff is being said, which is why, again, I skimmed a lot of the episode in my review. Obviously, I've still written out a bunch of pages of notes, I still watched the whole thing, but in the actual write-up of it, I kind of skimmed. I didn't go as detailed as I usually do, because it was the same thing over and over again, with nothing really happening. Even the tapping wasn't happening, which kind of brings me into the predictions a bit of, I predicted, I'm going to have to just remember because I haven't actually written out the predictions. I said all bets were off when it came to Carl and Stuart. That much I know for certain. I said something could fall, something could be thrown. I think I'd said about loud footsteps and loud banging, things like that. All of which kind of happened, except from something being thrown. You don't have that occur. But the ladder falls. So the ladders fall, and you do hear the loud footsteps above them. It's what leads them upstairs in the first place. And it's interesting because Carl made a comment of, I wanted to show around the place, but now we're hearing footsteps, so we're going to go upstairs. Do them both at the same time. They're not exclusive to one another. You don't have to look around the place and then look at footsteps, investigate the footsteps, or you don't have to go to see if where the footsteps are and not look around everywhere. Which seems they have this thing where they do one or the other, and it isn't that they can show around the house. It's big criticism when they hear the footsteps. Carl and Stu both go upstairs. They beeline straight to the room, which is all right, where they hear the footsteps from. And they're like, right, this is the room where we heard the footsteps. And I'm just like, okay. And then they stand there and then they talk. Meanwhile, in the background, you can see one door, I think it's closed, and then to the right of it, one door which is open, but the door isn't open to the point where it's properly against the wall. It's slightly diagonal. So someone could be in that room. Someone could be behind the door. Someone could be behind the wall. And they don't go and have a look in there. Later on in the episode, where they hear the bang, which they determine is a door slamming, Stuart has the camera and he's standing in that room with the ladders and he films as Carl goes in and out of these rooms. He doesn't follow him, he doesn't show these rooms to the camera. And you've got to stop and question, one, why is Stuart just not instinctively doing that, as he's been an investigator for 20 years? And two, why is Carl not noticing that Stuart's just standing there filming him when he should be filming the rooms? Why doesn't Carl go, oh, Stuart, you should be doing this, you've got the camera, film the rooms? It's like the moment after they hear the slam, and it's after the camera's been passed to Stuart. Carl goes to the door frame of the room where they've just heard the door slam. The shot has Carl in the middle of the shot, looking into the room, but along that side is where the wall is. So along that, you don't see into that room at all. You just see wall, and then you see Carl, and then the back wall that he's on. You can't see past that door frame. Carl is looking into that room, and he's saying, right, I can't go in, I don't have a torch. Instead of Stuart going, okay, I have this camera, I can see in the room through the night vision, I can lead the way, or Stuart saying, okay, I've got a torch, I can lead the way, kind of thing. He doesn't. He just stands there, fumbling around, finding a torch, being like, oh, here's a torch, Carl. Why does Carl have to go first? And why is that shot so that you can't see in that room at all? Not even a little bit. It's cut off by the door frame and by the wall. And then through this, it seems like just wasting time, as though there is someone else in there who's just trying to get into a position where they're not going to get caught on the camera. That's what it comes across as. And these are comments that I don't particularly want to be making when I watch Most Haunted. I know in the earlier seasons there's clips out there of them faking things, 100%. I have seen the clips for myself, and it seems like that with the earlier seasons. Especially when you consider like Derek and the fact that he was outed as being fake. I know he gave reasons for it. He said that it was the spirits messing with him and things, which was, it's a bit iffy. But he was kind of outed by Kieran O'Keefe at the time, and then Kieran O'Keefe left the programme. So back then, absolutely you can say it's all fake. But now with the YouTube channel and things, just because it was fake then, like this is my mentality, just because it's fake then doesn't mean it's still fake now. Especially not as they are choosing to put that message at the start of their videos, which says it's not for entertainment purposes only. Because, as I've commented in other posts, it is putting their credibility on the line. If anything was to come out of them faking anything, that people would just straight away point that message and go, hang on a minute, you said it wasn't for entertainment purposes only. You stand by the legitimacy of this investigation. Because I think it is legitimacy of the investigation that it says. Yep, it is. I wasn't sure if it said legitimacy or results. Both would be slightly different. Legitimacy implies that they're definitely not faking, whereas results says what you see in this footage did happen. They're not saying how it happened, but it would say it happened. But they say legitimacy. So they're saying that they are legitimate. So it's fine. That's why I've chosen to review them, because YouTube channel, they've got that at the start of the episodes, absolutely fine. But then you need to question why they film things in certain ways. And that particular shot after the door slammed came across as time wasting, and it came across as trying to hide any potential people in that room. And then when they do go in the room, for Carl to then be the one without a camera going in and out of rooms, and Stuart with the camera to just stand there filming him going in and out of rooms, it wasn't good at all to see. Because that's not how it should be. If you hear a noise, whoever has the camera, like if Carl had a camera, no issue. But he doesn't. Even if he had like little GoPro type thing on his head filming what he sees, that would be fine. But for Stuart to stand there in the room and to film him, you've got to question, why is Stuart not doing that? That they've been investigating for 20 years at this point, and I'm pretty sure Stuart was one of the I'm pretty sure Stuart was there from day one. He maybe wasn't like literally day one, but he was there in the early days, so he has been investigating for around 20 years. He's been a cameraman for them for around 20 years as well. So he should know how to film these things. And you can't say, oh, he's filming it like that because it makes it more entertaining, because it doesn't. It surely is more entertaining for him to go in and out of the rooms and to properly search, rather than just have a fixed shot of Carl coming in and out of rooms. And I know one argument you could say is that they probably got wrapped up in the investigation, right? That they're like, oh, they've experienced something, they weren't expecting it, and so they didn't think of this. They didn't think of filming in the room, because they would just, Carl straight away his mind went to, right, I need to look around the rooms, forgetting he had a camera, because usually he does have a camera. But I think that's too much benefit of the doubt for these kinds of investigators, and I think if there were new investigators, if they'd been investigating for a few episodes, a lot of this is probably like, to be fair, they're new, they're still learning it. But it's because they are so experienced, and because they have that message at the start saying that they stand by the legitimacy. When it comes to stuff like that, I can't really defend it. Because I said, I can try and think of what people who support the program, who do believe it, would say. But as someone who, because I believe in the paranormal, I believe it exists. I am aware though that there are teams that do fake things, and I'm aware that the paranormal, I don't think it operates to the extent that the fake people claim it to. Like, I think that it can all happen. I think that the paranormal can move things. I think that they can appear as apparitions. I think that you can hear their voices and things, and footsteps and knocking, and I absolutely believe all that, but I don't think it can happen as on command as often portrayed, and as frequently as often portrayed. And that's my issue with Carl Stewart. And going back to the predictions, the fact that I said something's probably going to fall and they're going to be the most active team, I shouldn't be able to predict that. I mean, I've seen the Witch's Cottage investigation as well, that they did as a standalone video. They didn't get much in that building. They got a lot of knocking, from what I remember, but, they cracked out a Ouija board and nothing was really happening. They said the glass was jumping a little bit, but I don't remember a lot happening there. The biggest thing that they caught there was the audio at the end of that episode. Nothing was falling. Nothing, as far as I can remember, was being thrown. So why is it that when Carl and Stuart are in there, ladders suddenly can fall over? And they're having doors slamming? And why is it that I could predict that? You've got to raise these questions, and this is why I'm trying to predict the next one as well. Although I do think it's tougher to predict the next one. The way that this was lined up was so easy to predict, because Carl and Stuart are straight away they're gonna get stuff, and they do immediately. The moment their section starts, they're there kind of on this little porch type of area, which is a bit undercover, and Carl's talking about Pendle Hill and being like, look, there's Pendle Hill in a distance. And then Stuart walks over to kind of go to the properly outside bit, and he stumbles forwards, probably because he's accidentally caught the door frame with his foot. And straight away he's like, what was that noise? To be fair, he does say, was that us? But he still questions what the noise is. And Carl doesn't say, oh yeah, that was you stumbling forward. And Carl even sees him stumble and says, oh, are you alright, Stuart? As he sees him fall. And Stuart straight away in response, oh, did you hear that noise? I was like, it was you hitting the door frame, Stuart. You see you fall at the moment the noise occurs. And then he comments on it being a dragging or grinding sound. I was like, probably because your foot just scraped the floor. This is the concern I have. And they don't rule it out as that. No one says, oh, it was probably just because you tripped over. It was because you stumbled. That might have been the noise you heard. For all I know, there might have been a noise there that didn't occur on camera. To try and be fair about it. But the fact he reacts like that the moment after he stumbles, after walking past that door frame, I think that was just the door frame. Like him stumbling. And I think that, because this is something that I've praised the team for, if ever a door closes or someone stumbles or anything like that, they usually claim it to be them, and they're usually like, oh no, it's not paranormal, it's just a door closing, it's just this, that, or the other. But the fact that Carl saw it and he didn't say, oh, it was probably just you stumbling, straight away, because he straight away says, oh, it's happening already, and I'm like, no, it probably isn't paranormal that he stumbled. So straight away, stuff started happening, and straight away I was dubious as to their results. Like I say, and also you've got the hand behind the post bit. When they're hearing knocking, talking about filming techniques, they're in a room, Carl hears a noise, and the way that it's filmed is Stuart is standing in this door frame, Carl has the camera on Stuart, and they're like, oh, we can hear knocking. You can't hear any knocking at this moment. I think you might be able to hear one or two knocks while Stuart's in this position, but I don't know if his hand moves. But his hand is, I'm gonna do it this way, like this, behind the doorpost. It is like in that position, and I comment on this in my written review. It is there so that his fingers are curled as though knocking on something, and you don't see it because obviously it's behind a post. I think you can see that this finger is curled at the time. But what happens with this section is they're commenting on the knocking. Stuart points down to the floor with his torch and kind of indicates, oh, it's right there. Carl then takes the camera, points it downwards, away from Stuart's face, away from his hand, which is about here, and films the floor. And then Carl says, it sounds like it's coming from right in front of you, Stuart. And then the tapping increases through this shot. While he's filming the floor, the tapping increases, and then he moves the camera back up to Stuart's face. His hand is still like that behind this post, and then the tapping kind of stops. I think you might hear like one or two, but it's not as frequent as when it's on the floor. And then Carl has a stupid idea, which is he asks Stuart to put his hand behind his back and hold up a certain amount of fingers, and ask the spirit how many fingers he's holding up. As I've said in my written review, if there was a camera on Stuart's back, it's an okay idea. Because it means Carl isn't the one doing the tapping. That's all it rules out. It just rules out Carl doing the tapping. Because obviously, if Stuart is there with his hand behind his back, holding up like all 5 fingers or something, and then a camera is filming that, and then suddenly 5 knocks occur, Carl can't see it. So he immediately knows. So the viewer knows it's not Carl who's doing the knocking because Carl can't see it and the knock amount was correct. Now you could say that he could have guessed, but it could be someone else in the room who would be off shot who's just done it potentially, because we've established that there might be someone else from that door slam and from the ladder falling. So there could be someone else off shot, sees, oh yeah, I can see behind your back, knock 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 kind of thing. But the fact that before that happens, before he puts his hand behind, he moves his hand away from the post. And I think that this is a mistake, because again, when he moves his hand away from the post, it is in this position. Which then immediately, you're then thinking, hang on, why was your hand curled up like that? I mean, if I ever rest my hand against a wall or something, I do this. I don't do this. Why is his hand like this? You could argue it's cold, maybe, and his fingers are kind of curled up because it's cold, but his arm is up. His hand is like this. And when you're hearing the knocking, and his hand's like that against a wooden post, and you can see his fingers don't move, they don't curl up as he moves it away, you have to question why they're filming the floor, why they're not filming Stuart's face, why his hand's behind the post, why his fingers are curled, and then you've got, it's why they don't have a second camera, why they don't have a camera in any rooms. I know Carl explained it's because of the expenses, but you can have one camera in that room and it's not going to cost them that much. They are most haunted. As I said in, I think, the previous review, it costs them a lot of money to rent out that location. Far more than it would cost to buy a couple of cameras to be able to have rolling in there, even if it was just for an hour each. So, yeah, it doesn't line up for me with what they say. It comes across a bit like excuses, and like I said, the fingers behind the back thing, and Stuart even says, "Oh, I'm not lying, I know you can't see, but I'm not lying." It's not good enough. And I got feedback from the last one saying that I'm not using the word scientific enough, which is very, very true. I should use the word scientific more, especially when it comes to discussing Most Haunted, because it is not scientific for them to rely on just, I told you, like, of just trust me kind of thing. For him to say, "Oh, I know you can't see, but just trust me here." You can't rely on that. That's not science at all. That's potentially just making stuff up and going along with it. You need to properly, when investigating, you need to be like, right, what do we know is here? We've heard this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. We've heard about doors slamming, we've heard about footsteps, we've heard about knocking on the walls. So then you go, like, first, you should show around the location in one big long take, saying, look, there is no one behind these doors, no one behind the counters, no one here. Ideally, they wouldn't cut between their cameras either. Unless you can overlay the footage. If the footage is overlaid, then that's fine. Because you can judge it as, well, yeah, you can overlay the footage so playing side by side, but also you can kind of pull it back a bit, if that makes sense. I'm not good at describing this, but if someone says, "What's that?" on your first string of footage, the second string of footage from the different camera perspective needs to start with the person saying, "What's that?" Right? So you're pulling it back a little bit. So then you can overlap and be like, okay, yeah, they match perfectly. That's how you kind of show it's all one long take, even though you've swapped camera. What you don't do is jump to someone else in a completely different location and then jump back to yours, because that is a cut. That is a cut where anything could happen. Someone could be leaving the house, someone could be entering the house, all sorts of things could be going on. But with, I've lost my train of thought now. I think I was just talking about scientific stuff. I went on a big bit of a tangent. But yeah, but being scientific, yeah, you need to search around the house, preferably in one long take, and then you need to determine, right, we've heard with that doors slam upstairs in this particular room. So then they go upstairs to that particular room. They probably set up a camera facing either side of the door, like trying to cover both rooms either side of the door, so that you can rule out anyone going in there, slamming it or whatever. Because you're like, right, this is the door that it's said to slam. So you make sure you have locked off cameras on that door. And then you do your investigation. And then if you do happen to leave that room for whatever reason, like in this one, before the ladder incident, Stuart says he sees a light in a door frame, so they go over to the other room, the ladders fall. If they had a camera pointing at that door which slammed, they would have caught the ladders falling. But they don't. Granted, they may not have been told about that particular door is said to slam, but this is how you investigate. You try and get as many camera angles as possible, and you try and get as much footage as possible, and you need to be smart about how you're filming. Is it when Stuart goes, why do they go into that room? They see it in the door frame. Really, Carl should try with his camera, because I think it's Carl holding the camera at the time, should try wide angle. Just so he's seen through the door, he's seen the other door. And I can guarantee you, if he did that, the ladders wouldn't fall. And I know believers in the paranormal would say ladders didn't fall because he's got a camera on it. The paranormal doesn't like to work with the camera on it. Carl says that he's caught stuff happen on locked off cameras before. That's why they need a locked off camera in that room. And if they can't afford it, they need to not do 5 or 6 locations in one go. They need to limit it. Less is more. Do the best investigation you can do, and that involves cameras. And if you have 10 cameras and you can't split them up across all 6 locations because they're too big of a location, do 1 or 2 locations. Have 5 cameras in each. That's how you try and be scientific about it. And also you bring in equipment. As I said in the previous review, it would have been nice for them to have more equipment. Now here, Yvette has a K2 meter, which I was very happy about, but it's in the wrong location. Because they were in the the hospital wing. Hospital wing and then the upper living quarters. And I said for the previous one, because that's where Greg was, it would have been great for him to have had that type of thing, like some equipment. But I said the K2 meter or REM pods probably wouldn't be great for him because there's electricity going through that building. So if they go off, they might be set off by something electrical. Lo and behold, during the episode, Yvette's there with a K2 meter, with a torch. Oh, it's gone off. Oh, wait, it's just my torch. Immediately renders it useless. And these are things that experienced investigators should know. They should know that. And straight away, I've been doing this for, in terms of this blog, for just over a year now. I've done a couple of investigations myself in this room. But, so, you'd say that I am an inexperienced investigator is how I would rule it. But Most Haunted, they've been doing it for 20 years. They should know these things. If I know them, they should know them. It's why I pointed out, with the flies in the previous thing, with association with demons. Carl didn't know that. And I was like, why do you not know this? I am at the very start of my paranormal journey, as it were, but he isn't. He's 20 years in. And how do you not know it? That's what I find baffling. So there's a lot of stuff with Carl and Stuart in particular, and you notice that in this I'm talking a lot about Carl and Stuart, and that's mainly because that's where the issues are in the episode. Not much happens in Yvette and Glenn's, not much happens in Greg's, but Carl and Stuart, stuff happens, and it's not even convincing stuff. That's the issue. And I might be wrong. It might all be real that happened. It might be. But the way it's filmed opens up the argument far too easily to say, oh, that's not real. You've just done this through by doing this. So whenever they hear banging on the ceiling, the camera goes up straight away. No one is in shot. So you don't know if that banging is from the ceiling, or if it's actually from underneath Stuart's foot. And you will never know, because he's not filming the beat. This is why I've said, if you hear banging, you ideally need to have the entire, a whole body shot of everyone who's in the building, basically, while that tapping's happening. And that kind of thing rarely happens, which kind of leads me on to Greg's bit a little bit. He was in the witch's cottage, not witch's cottage, he was in the old farm cottage, which is where Stuart investigated. Stuart seemed absolutely terrorised in that cottage. He was hearing all sorts of banging, he was sitting on the stairs, head in hands, seeming like he was having a bit of a breakdown, and that's what he was experiencing. Greg, I somewhat accurately predicted. I said I think he's going to get similar to what he got in the psychiatric, not in the hospital wing, where he was hearing tapping. It wasn't particularly audible to camera, but he was hearing tapping. He was following the tapping, and he was hearing a bit of footsteps. That's what I thought he would get as well in this cottage. Even though Stuart got a ton of stuff, I was like, from a paranormal argument, you could say the spirit's used up all of its energy. From a skeptical argument, you could argue stuff's being faked with Carl and Stuart, and it's not being faked with Greg. So, he's in that cottage. He does a brilliant thing of, he does capture a bit of a shot behind the counter, which Stuart never gets, and you can see no one is there, but that there is enough space if someone wanted to be there. And he sets this camera down on this counter, he steps back from it, so that you have a whole body shot of him in the room. I'm pretty sure you can even see his feet, which is fantastic. And he even crouches down in certain shots, so you can see the top of his head to his feet. And that's absolutely brilliant, because then if you do hear tapping, you can look at him and you can say, right, I can see no clear movement from Greg, tapping his feet or knocking on walls or anything like that. And that's brilliant, because that's how investigating is done. That way, if they hear any tapping on that footage, they can be like, Greg was the only one in the building. We know he was the only one in the building. That's unusual to be hearing that tapping. Now, he doesn't show around the whole building to begin with. That's a criticism I have of him there. But he does show around the lower floor, which kind of sticks in line with what Carl had said a couple of episodes ago, which is that he told the team to not go up there because it was unsafe. So for him to not immediately run upstairs, I'm okay with that, because he, in theory, has been told, don't go up there, it's not safe. He does go up there later, but it's, But you don't hear anything clear on camera. You can hear a constant drip, and he questions this, because he says he can hear tapping, and he's straight looking around being like, oh, is there a drip in here? I can't see one. You have him then like stepping on the floor, checking how damp it is, shining his torch there and being like, right, is there a drip here? Is it wet? I don't know. That's what investigating is. It's experiencing something and then investigating it. It is trying to rule out the normal explanations to then give way for the paranormal explanations. Not what Carl and Stuart do of just jump into, oh my god, it's paranormal straight away. It's like, something else could be causing it. You need to try and film in a way to rule out all of those normal possibilities. And straight away you should be ruling out your own team members. Carl and Stuart don't do that with how they film. Greg does. And that is why I'm very, very, very positive about his particular section. Because that all showed proper investigating. So yeah, that's what I really have to say to that. And he doesn't experience much. Another good thing, he does say a good point at the end of his investigation, which is that there's like 100 episodes of Most Haunted where nothing happens, and they never make it to air. It would be great for Most Haunted to release these episodes. It would be fantastic, because to watch their episodes and stuff to happen every single episode, it makes it questionable, because especially as they don't say when each episode is filmed, which they should do. That would counterbalance this point. If they said when each investigation was filmed, and they were like one a month or something like that, or even if they released like a film schedule, so we're not necessarily seeing the dull episodes, but we know they exist. So they're like, oh, on Monday we'll film this place, on Wednesday we'll film this place, Friday this place, Sunday this place. Only one of those 4 investigations actually had something, and that is the one that's making it to air. If they did that, I wouldn't mind. But it's the fact every investigation they encounter something, and we don't know that there are these other episodes. So straight away you look at that and you're like, why are you getting something everywhere you go? But if they're not, then that's a good thing. And that's why they should try and discuss these episodes that don't air. Because it would add validity to them. It would add legitimacy if stuff wasn't happening in every investigation. So, I mean, you could then argue, oh, they fake stuff. Some investigations and not others. You could argue that. But at the same time, it just helps a little bit for them. But it was very good that Greg mentioned that, that there are loads of episodes that just don't air because of nothing happening. Although it does set false pretenses for other investigators, because then they're expecting to go to locations and to get stuff every time, and they're not going to. But yeah, and then you've got Yvonne and Glenn's section, which I haven't really discussed. I've said about the K2 meter, which was great, until she rendered it absolutely useless by discovering that if her torch gets too close to it, it sets it off. These are things that investigators should know. The K2 meters and REM pods in places with technology. I mean, I've discovered this doing investigations here. K2 meter can be a bit because I still have the power on. I still have the Wi-Fi box on. If I am sat too close to that Wi-Fi box, it will occasionally detect signals from it, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, it's gone up to like orange," or what, like the fourth thing, and I'm just like, and then straight away you start thinking, "Oh, is it paranormal?" But then you're like, "No, it's just I'm sat near a Wi-Fi box." So yeah, so if it was the old cottage, brilliant, because it's an abandoned cottage where I don't think there's any Wi-Fi going through it. I don't know if there are security cameras. I know in the witch's cottage, Carl showed that there was a security camera box there, so there was power going through. But I don't think there's that in the farmer's cottage, in the old cottage. So that would be brilliant for a REM pod or a K2 meter, brilliant. But they don't have it there, and I'm like, why? Again, you're experiencing tapping and knocking and all of this phenomena, which is the spirit interacting physically with a wall to create that sound. Why don't you have cat balls or anything that they can touch and then it can light up to show you that it's been touched? I don't know why they don't have it, because they have cat balls. They had it in the previous Witch's Cottage investigation. So, anyway, back to Glenn and Yvette. They were walking around and it was very quiet, which was very good because my prediction was off with them. I predicted that because Yvette was there, they're probably going to experience some tapping, or some knocks or something like that. And with Glenn being there, the activity wouldn't be particularly extreme. That was my prediction, and I was quite wrong with that, because they don't really experience anything. They hear a door slam, and that is about it. So I was like, okay, I didn't have door slamming on the bingo card, as it were, but so yeah, so that was interesting to see that. But it was also interesting to see Yvette, because I'm on the fence with Yvette. When it comes to Carl and Stuart, I'm like, there are shenanigans at play. But with Yvette, I think she often comes across as very genuine in regards to her belief and excitement to the paranormal and her interest in things. Through that section, she was walking around looking increasingly frustrated. And Glenn kind of poked fun at her a little bit. By saying, "Oh, I thought you'd have been liking this, because it's so quiet." And then she's like, "No, I want something to happen. I want stuff to happen." I was like, okay, that's good. That's a good attitude for an investigator to have. And it kind of makes me think maybe she is genuine, because she's wanting stuff to happen. Or maybe, from a skeptical point of view, you could argue Glenn is present. Maybe she doesn't want to be faking things in the presence of Glenn. Maybe it's at the point where he's like, "I will call it out." And she knows that, and so, that, I'm sure you know what I'm trying to get. So, and as a result, she knows she can't really fake things. It's like the door slam happens in the distance. So if anyone was to fake anything with that, they would be in the distance, out of Glenn's view. Because I think Glenn is genuine. I don't know about Yvette, that's the thing. I think that she potentially is. This quiet segment implied so, which makes the next investigation so hard to predict. Because she didn't even experience a tap. She didn't experience a tapping in it, which was interesting. So I had a very quiet investigation. They went in a lift, trying to make the lift stop. It didn't. That was an interesting experiment. So that's pretty much my overall thoughts. I'm thinking. I think I've discussed everything. Carl and Stuart need to do better, and Yvette and Glenn were great. Again, very impressed with Glenn, and very, very impressed with Greg. Greg was the standout for this episode. but overall thoughts on the episode is it's not scientific at all. None of them. Aside Greg. Greg is the only one who showed any kind of scientific attitude. Carl and Stuart didn't, because they were just seemingly freaking out and pushing the narrative of look how horrible it is, and oh my god, it's gone cold. And then you've got Yvette and Glenn, who are going room to room too quickly, or at least that's what the footage is portraying, for it to be scientific. It's very much so just walking around blind with them. Like they don't know what there is there. They don't know what they're going to experience. They're just roaming the building and expecting or trying to hope for something to happen. And it was a big space as well that they were in. Also, but they briefly tried to investigate what happened to Carl, but it was only brief because Yvette quickly, not like that, but you left the room, so Glenn had to follow. Which again raises the question of why is she suddenly left the room, and really they probably should try and investigate what happened to Carl. But yeah, so that is that. In next investigation, the next video, the next one, the next part. So it ends with Yvette telling us Carl's in the hospital wing, Glenn is in the old cottage, Stuart is in the psychiatric building, and Yvette and Greg are in the cellars. I am excited for this episode as well. And the first part's going to be Yvette and Greg in the cellars. Carl in the hospital wing. This is where he was injured. This is where he went down with a bad back and was seeing faces in windows and things. Again, I'm expecting that from him. I don't think he'll be quiet. Everyone who has been in there, and this is going to be an interesting test. Everyone who has been in the hospital wing, it's been quiet for them. Greg was in there, he heard slight tapping footsteps and was kind of chasing it around. Glenn and Yvette go there, it's very quiet. If Carl goes there and has doors slamming, he says he's injured, he's seen figures, if that happens, the team really need to question Carl being involved. That's what I would say. Because if all that happens, if he gets somewhat extreme activity, the team need to question it. And the viewers need to question it. But, like I said, I don't know what he's got. He might get nothing, at which point it's fine. And if he gets something, I'm like, I'll be very surprised. I'll be very, very surprised at that. Then you've got Glenn in the old cottage. 1 minute, I've just got a message. There we go. So you've got Glenn in the old cottage, which will again be very interesting. Glenn in the old cottage is going to be so interesting because again, Glenn, I don't think anything's going to happen. He might get some stuff, but I don't think he's going to get what Stuart got. If he gets what Stuart got, I'll be amazed. Because for me, Glenn and Carl are the opposites. Glenn's the skeptic, Carl's the guy whose stuff just seems to revolve around. So if Glenn suddenly gets stuff there, I'll be really impressed. I'll be very impressed. But, that being said, he needs to film it properly. And he's the skeptic of the team. Granted, he's not a parapsychologist like what Kieran O'Keefe was, but he's still acting as the skeptic. If he hears knocks, I fully expect him to go in and out of rooms with his camera showing behind doors, trying to film it as best as he can. That's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm hoping for, is more what I should say. Whether or not I'm expecting it is a different matter. And Stuart in the psychiatric building, that's where he was hearing the slamming and things when doing the general shots, where the cells were. So that's where Carl and Yvette heard the sounds, the moans. I think he would get similar. I think he's probably going to get the doors slamming again. He's experienced it once. I feel like he'll experience it again. But it'll be interesting to see what will happen. And then Greg and Yvette in the cells. I don't know with that one, because Greg I'm very impressed with. Yvette got very quiet stuff, not even the tapping. So I'm expecting, because this tapping seems to kind of follow Yvette around, and because you've got Greg who has experienced tapping, I think you'll get some of that. You might get footsteps. I don't think it'll go beyond that. I think it's going to be quite minimal for their investigation in the cellars, but I don't know for sure. That's the one I'm least certain on. Carl, I think he'll get stuff. Glenn, I think he won't get much, if anything. Stuart, I think he'll get stuff. Yvette and Greg, it could go either way, but I don't think they'll get any. Well, I don't think they'll get much. So yes, that's my review of the episode. Basically sums up with they need to film it better. They need to. They really do. Carl and Stuart say I was laughing right away from the beginning because of how ridiculous it became. Is the only way of putting it. For them to claiming to experience just straight away when Stuart stumbled, and then the light bulb as well. I didn't mention that. Carl saying, "I'm going to swing this light bulb. Make it stop." You've just moved it from a place of rest, Carl. It's going to stop naturally. And then for him to be like, "Oh, has that just stopped naturally?" Even Stuart laughs at him. I'm just... They need to not do things like that. They need to not do stupid experiments. That and the things behind the back thing. If Carl had said, "Oh, there's a light bulb, make it swing," that's absolutely fine. Things behind the back. If you have a camera showing it, that's much better. But it's the fact that they didn't have that just shows inexperience. That's what it came across as. It just came across as Carl and Stuart being very inexperienced, Yvette being impatient, which is fine because she wants activity to happen. Nothing was happening. Although you shouldn't have an expectation of things happening. Glenn, he's there. He's commenting on stuff. He's cool. And then Greg being brilliant. He was definitely the highlight of it. But yeah, so that's pretty much everything that I have to say on that. So thank you very much for watching the review. I don't know how long it was. Probably an hour. Probably a bit shorter there than usual. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed. I will upload this to YouTube. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. This is where I need to press finish now, and it isn't letting me. I need to lift up the thing a little bit.